I was at home and I looked out of my window and I saw a horizontal line of smoke. I live quite close by. I live walking distance to the tower, to the area, and just couldn't work out what it was. It looked a bit like a aeroplane, the trail an aeroplane sometimes leaves, but it was dark. And I actually went out for the day, and I left the area for the day, and then when I listened to the news in the car in the afternoon, I heard reports about what happened, and that's how I found out about it. A production company called Minnow Films, who we've both worked for many times before, started filming very soon after the fire. Very soon after the news of the fire broke, they sent people down to start filming, and I think it was not until a couple of weeks after that that the BBC decided that they wanted to commission Minnow Films to make the documentary. Minnow Films has a fantastic pedigree in making films of that kind anyway, so they knew they could trust them with that. And I had made a film about the 7/7 bombings in London, and Morgan and the BBC both asked me if I would make the Minnow Films film about the fire and its aftermath. So that's how I got involved.
Well, I think I just went and did a bit of that shooting at the beginning because I work a lot for Minnow as well. So they just called up and said, "Can you get down and take some pictures?" So because I think they were afraid that it was going to be covered up quite quickly. So just to have a record of that before it started, and then I didn't really come on board for another few months. I think we did a test. We got together, shot a test. I think it was in November. I think, right?
I wanted Brendan to shoot the master interviews for the film, but I didn't know when that was going to be, because the nature of the project was such that the people in the community were so traumatized by events, and their lives were so chaotic and busy with just trying to rebuild their own lives to be sorted with accommodation and so on, and they just had so many things going on that I didn't know when people would be available to sit down and do a master interview. We made a very important decision very early on, which was to shoot the master interviews in a location that represented the community, and the reason we did that was partly because we wanted to convey this was a community experience, but also for the sake of the interviewees, we wanted to be able to conduct the interviews in spaces they were familiar with, so that they and that also were close to where they lived, so they didn't have to travel long distance and sit in some strange studio somewhere. That actually it was a space that they knew.
I think also quite early on we had a conversation where you said there is the visual landscape. There is no one visual landscape here, because obviously with user-generated content, also with the fact that other people have been out filming, and then we were going to do the interviews. So it wasn't like the unity wasn't necessarily there, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it just represents many voices, I suppose. I remember you saying to me that you were like, there won't be a unity to it, which is fine. So.
And actually, it was there's a Spike Lee made a film called When the Levees Broke. After Hurricane Katrina, and it was a very important film, and actually informed the documentary that we made together about the 7/7 bombings, in that he filled it with contributors, and it was a kind of mosaic, if you will, of interviews and footage, news footage that people had shot themselves, stuff that was shot expressly for the documentary and so on, and it was kind of patching it all together. And we knew that the film wouldn't have a kind of, as Brendan's saying, a kind of coherent, kind of smooth style. It would be this assemblage of lots and lots of different elements. And actually that was, I think, part of the strength of the film, is that it feels like it is just a collection of all of these different points of view and all of these different perspectives. Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. You get butterflies, when somebody turns up for an interview. I mean, you feel anxious. You feel anxious because you know it means a lot for them to be there. You know that you're going to get into territory that's difficult, and you know that they could get upset, and you could feel upset. But it helps when you feel like you've got a real sense of purpose with the thing that you're making, and that actually you want to give people a platform to share their experiences. That makes a huge difference, and I think that if you can establish that with your interviewees, with your contributors, that's what we're about, that's what we're here for. The more transparent you are up front, and the more you explain clearly what your intentions are and what you expect from them, and you make it clear to them that it's their interview, they own that interview, and you're grateful to them for being there and so on, then they kind of relax and they realise that actually you're all there for the same reason, and that is because this is something that's important to talk about. Brendan's got this brilliant sort of combination of absolutely meticulous technical expertise, but also being incredibly sensitive to the contributors. And what he will do is he will do quietly doing adjustments and stuff while I'm talking to people and I'm kind of laying the kind of, setting the scene for what we're about to do and so on. And I know I can 100% rely on him to be making the shot look absolutely perfect, but also not doing anything that's going to upset anybody.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to create a very relaxed atmosphere, but also there's a point at which you're fussing around and, like sometimes you have to compromise a little bit on something just because it's going to upset people too much, like elongate the process. But I think everyone's pretty attuned to that. Like everyone on the crew, I think when they arrive, everyone's relaxed. No one's, because obviously we're up against a schedule, but you can't show that. So that puts them at their ease, and also I just think being sensitive to what they're going through, so you can see when the process is too much for them, and you take a pause, or you do, I think after filming many interviews, you can be attuned to when somebody doesn't want to say that they want to stop, or you can give them the space to do that. So I just think that comes with experience. So. I think that, like, say, obviously every relationship with the director is different, but like the good ones, in my experience, you're so on the same page with them that by the time you're actually doing the filming, because that's not the time that you can be like, oh, hang on, I thought you wanted this done. You have to know exactly what they want. And I think also the more you work with somebody, the more you know how each other thinks, so that the actual that process is like streamlined, because it is. You're always against the clock.
The question of editing all of that footage together, was just a huge undertaking. There was hundreds of hours of it. Lots of material that we had shot expressly for the documentary. And in one's sort of anxiety to make sure you're covering the right things, you shoot an awful lot of stuff. But also, we got people's phone footage and lots of news footage, because it was huge news coverage, international news coverage and so on. It was about bringing all of that stuff together and working out how to view it all and work out what to use. And Ben Brown, the editor, just did an absolutely extraordinary job of filtering that material. He was exasperated a lot of the time because he felt like he wasn't able to watch it all, and he wanted to know what was out there and what he could use, but did just the most extraordinary job of paring down all of this stuff to make the film. A lot of the people that took part in the documentary feel very pleased that they did. It was a big leap of faith because there was a lot of mistrust in the community towards the media, and the BBC in particular, actually. They are very proud of the film, and people have described it as their film, which, I'm sure not everybody thinks of it that way, but some have, and some people that are very central to the campaign for justice and so on, who are... I don't know whether it's helped the healing process, but I think that they feel that it has contributed towards a sort of common understanding of the issues that it's raised, about social housing and about our relationship with government and so on. And I think that it's had a contribution to make on that score.
One of the good things about the film was that it gave a very good perspective of how those people that were involved, and if you can get into somebody's shoes and you can understand their point of view, if you live in a different city, if you do, to understand the sort of landscape, and I think that's, if you can get some understanding on another person's perspective, then that's all that you can hope for, really, from a film like that.
Yeah. It's very easy to read, the newspapers, while you're eating your cornflakes, and read and think you know about something, and actually you don't know about it at all. What you're seeing, it all filtered through the pen of a journalist. And actually, if you meet contributors during the course of a documentary, and if you meet multiple people, and you just have so much clearer, better idea of what actually this is really about and what the experience was like. And if people can get that from the film, if people can feel that, I feel like I know to some degree some of the people affected, then of course they're going to be more engaged with it, they're going to be more interested, and they're going to be better informed about it. The thing about a documentary is it can only go so far. It can't tell the whole story, and the whole thing is very reductive, something which you need to explain to contributors at the beginning, that this film will leave things out that you would like to be in and so on. But it can be a valuable contribution to understanding the issues involved.
I think the important thing is if you want to get into documentaries, what you need to do is go and start making documentaries. And the fact that you can have access, you know, you can shoot it on a 5D, you can shoot it on a A7S Mark II. It doesn't have to necessarily be the best quality camera because it's about the idea that counts. So if you've got an idea, you can just go and start making it, and then you've got something to show people, because that I think is the most important thing, is having something good to show people is always a really good tool to have. And also, obviously, the more you make, the more you understand the process, the more you understand how to tell a story. You know, I feel like it's a doing thing. So going out and doing it is a really important thing to do.
You shouldn't be too precious about making the perfect film. I think it's really important. What you need to do is just develop your filmmaking chops by making any kind of film. Any kind of film. Even if no one sees it, make it for yourself. Make a 3-minute
you'll
film
learn
for
something
yourself,
from that.
and you'll learn what works and what doesn't work, because there is no substitute for experience. All kinds of schooling and coaching is great, but it's experience that really teaches you what you need to know.